Right. Well, we can get started. And just to introduce, this is a roundtable, and we've got the pleasure of having Sunil, who's advisor and solution engineer at Confluent, who's going to be talking about Kafka. Um, and the topic would be when's the best time to adopt the major innovations and the challenges around adopting the technology, um, and doing so in different parts of the business. Um, and we're going to learn about how success depends on many factors and how to make decisions around this to achieve success in real time. So the format of this session will be a conversation aided with slides and questions from the audience. So the audience can enter questions within the chat window and then also through submissions earlier upon registration, which I have here and will read out. So Sunil, with that, we have a very short time to cover a very interesting topic. I'll let you proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the kind introduction that you have for me. And just to start with, just give a reflection on things. So I've been working with Confluent, and we have been working like as a part of the role that I have. I talk with a lot of businesses and interact, whether it's a financial industry or a gaming industry. So this is something which I do on a day-to-day basis, and more of the discussions that we'll be having, it is on the real things that we do on the field, and it will really bring out certain parts and points which we need to figure out. So do you have any like questions to start up with here on my side?
Okay, maybe just introduce, for those who don't know, a bit about Kafka, a bit about data in motion events.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
Thank you. So just to like mention, like before even going there, I'll put it different. So we all are living in a very different times that the previous generations have not lived in. So that's the pandemic I am referring to. And what this has led us to realize that what we have been doing from past some of the years, that might not be applicable going forward. In short, what I mean to say is the world is changing, and the teams or the organizations which are capable of this change are someone who will be motivated to go forward and win in the new environment. Said that this is something which started happening prior to pandemic as well. So the way technology has been perceived in past is it's a support function for an organization, and it was required for creating growth in the organization, and it should be good enough to run with yesterday's data. But if we talk of businesses today, so these businesses, technology itself is something has become the business, and innovation is not required for growth, but it's required for your survival. So you cannot rely on yesterday's data. So if you are still relying on the yesterday's data, probably you're looking for a failure in future. So the current times require us to be modern, real-time data infrastructures as a must-have for our organizations to move on. Said that, I think you all must have experienced this. So we do not have the cassettes or CDs. Even the last 2 years, we do not have a theater to go to because of the shutdowns and the lockdowns. So this was a, uh epic scenario where the OTT applications, whether it be a Netflix or a Amazon Prime or a Disney Hotstar, were able to leverage on the situation. And now the entertainment industry has moved from a brick and mortar to a handheld device that you have. Same goes for the banking organizations. All so if I look like 10 years back, probably I have to stand in a queue in a bank to get things done. Maybe as simple as we are taking out some money or doing some transactions. But today, even in India, every bank has its own mobile application or a website through which I can access any kind of data, do transfer or transaction. I don't need to be there in person. Similarly, we are very much aware of the taxi hailing services, and these have changed the entire way we used to look at the business or the organizations. So it's an entire paradigm shift that we see. And today, I cannot imagine traveling from one point to other point without a taxi service that we have today. So this transformation that I've been talking about, it's not just few of the industries are doing it. It's something which is applicable to everywhere or like every industry and every use case that you can think of. Yeah, whether it's a transportation, where we are thinking of the new age companies, or we have the large or legacy organizations which are also reinventing their processes or systems, which needs to reinvent their business, and that's applicable for retail and finance. Jonathan, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So I think that's the foundation between the motivation and the transformation that's happening. Really, let's say the questions are coming from the direction of looking for, when building an API,
Mhm.
apart from security, availability, what other things relate to the business, and especially in relation to this paradigm of event streaming. So why is event streaming important in all of this?
Sure. So first, let's think from like what is enabling these transformations as we speak around this, and then we will be able to realize what event streaming is and how things are moving in this directions. So when like if you're like 10 years back, it was uh, uh, iPhone it's like there was a statement made like iPod, a phone, and a communicator all together. That's where a smartphone was born. And having this device in hand, what it has done in the last 10 years is the usage by the retail customers in terms of the internet usage, the data usage, and the kind of applications that are powering these use cases, whether it's a OTT application for entertainment, whether it's a taxi hailing service, whether it's food ordering system. So all could be done with a single click of button. So that's where a mobile has changed the way of operation or interaction, or to be the overall the behavior of the end customer. Now, these applications that are sitting on these mobiles are now getting powered not by data centers actually, but these are the cloud solutions provider. You can think of a AWS or Google or Azure kind of setup where a team of like 3 or 4 people can set up any kind of database systems or any cloud infrastructure in any part of the corner, just sitting at their home. So cloud is adding a lot of benefits or fast tracking the entire process of creating a solution and managing and scaling it. So that's how mobile or application sitting on the mobile channel from cloud deployments or leverage the cloud. Now, once the solutions that I've already discussed are already on the cloud, the next crucial thing that becomes for each of these applications is event streaming. So event streaming, you can think of as any event that has happened in the time. And when we leverage event streaming in more detail, it's the ability of the organization to take a real-time action for any event that has happened on a point of time. And what would that lead to? That's something which we see as machine learning, where you might have thought, or if you play through some OTT application, for example, if you can take a Netflix, if you have played some videos there, after you stop watching a movie, you suddenly get suggestions for uh, which other movies to watch based on the genre or the actors that are playing role in that movie. Or if you have looked for, if you're going to any retail or e-commerce website, when you're purchasing certain items, you get a notification that certain items could be delivered you within 24 hours. Or if you buy item A with item B, you get a 30% discount on that. So that's where a machine learning will come. So we need to rethink about the user experience, the data centers that we know today, rethink data in terms of the motion and how the decision making can be made in a real time as a recommendation system. So today what we see is there's a huge transition that's happening for the adoption of event streaming, which I'll be covering in more detail.
That's great. So you've given us a sort of paradigm why this is happening, and that all businesses need to transform, and that the next logical step would be event streaming as some kind of support, for example, machine learning or handling big data.
Yep.
And there's a question here about tooling. What's the best tool to develop AI? Is it PHP, Java, whatever? And really, the question is, how does Confluent fit into this? What's Confluent's journey? Why use Kafka, for example?
Sure. So uh, I'll just little bit elaborate a little bit more on event streaming, because
Mm,
it will give a more perspective, like how
sure.
or how to move to a Confluent cloud kind of setup. So
Yep.
imagine like you're standing in the street, right? Would you cross the street like eyes closed with 5 minutes older data? So probably a car will come and hit you. So that's something which we cannot afford to, like, even if we are crossing the street. Then how can we imagine to run our businesses with older data? So what real-time data does is it beats the slow data. So if you think from a transportation point of view, so we do have autonomous vehicles. So they need data in real time. So you cannot press the brake after 1 hour if you see someone in front of you, right? So that, like driver rider match. So that's something which you need in real time for a taxi hailing service, ETA updates for food delivery systems. From banking or financial point, if you have done any fraudulent transaction that's happened in your account, you need a notification at that moment to de-risk the entire flow. Similarly, from retail, if you see some orders happening very pretty soon on your side, so how do we manage the inventory in real time? If the logistics break as we go forward, how do we take care of that? Similarly, for entertainment, how do we give recommendation or engage our customers on our platform? So that's where the need for real time comes in, and we see the cloud and the event streaming fitting as a fundamental paradigm shift that we see now. So, yeah, I'd like to like add on to this previous questions here, uh, uh, and so data in motion is something as a we are doing from a Confluent perspective. So I'd like to talk more on the event streaming part. Uh, so Jonathan, if you like have some questions here.
Well, really, the last question was about tooling, but it seems
Yeah,
from what you've just said, it's about understanding the use case. And like the
yeah,
analogy of the kids crossing a road, I think we can always keep that in mind. We need real time data and we need it for a reason, right? For the business outcomes.
yes,
Um, so I think that, like you say, that's a prelude to specifically what Confluent is, Kafka, for example, as a tooling.
yeah. So, uh, so what does Kafka do? So let's understand that part. So first we need to understand what an event is. So event is anything that has happened in your business in a specific time. So let's say you're in transportation. So let's say Shini detects there's a low tire pressure at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. So that's an event. So if you get an event like this, what kind of support can you provide for the vehicle? If you see there's a fraudulent transaction, like Karthik has sent like 250 rupees to Sharat at Friday at 7:34 p.m., which is not intentional. How do you take care of a situation at that moment of time? And like there's a order being booked by Prashant of like the Nike shoes. When was it shipped? So can you do this real-time visualization? That's where the concept of event comes up. And event streaming, like as I put it like very bluntly, it's the ability of the organization to take actions on the real-time data. So that's where event streaming stands for. And the more and more enterprises are adapting this, this is becoming as a must-have to have a central nervous system for today. And that's where Apache Kafka as a technology kicks in, and which provides you the platform to support all of these functionalities that we speak of. Just to visualize it one more time, to conceptualize, let's say you have a front end application, it's a retail shop where you're placing orders. And these orders have been need to be checked in terms of what is available in inventory. When you have checked the data is or the objects of shipping items are available in the inventory, these needs to be shipped. And then parallelly you can do the reporting, like if something is breaking in the system. And the system is totally on a event driven system, which means every action starting from placing the order to making sure the inventory is full, shipping these items, creating a reporting dashboards. So all of these things can be done as a real time uh, thing from your side. So that's where event streaming lies up. But as we think from Confluent perspective, let's put it this way: like Apache Kafka started in 2010 by the founders of Confluent, and when they were part of LinkedIn, and then they moved out. They made Apache Kafka open source, and in 2014 they created Confluent, which is now owning most of the organizations, and 80% of the Fortune 100 companies are today on Kafka. So if you think of like Kafka or a Confluent, uh, so I'll just wait for like Jonathan. Like, I think you have questions for me.
You saw the microphone come off, yeah. So
Yeah,
let me see. Okay, so 80% of Fortune 100, and that was done in 5 years. So there seems
oh,
to be pretty fast adoption there. Um,
exactly. So,
so I'm just wondering why have they chosen Well, why have they chosen event streaming? I think you've answered that. Change
yeah.
in business. Why have they chosen Kafka? And if what are they using it for?
Sure. So let's jump on to that part. First, let us understand what is Kafka and what is Confluent doing for you. So Kafka remains the core technology, which is the core engine, I'll say, if you visualize it like that. Whereas Confluent is like ready to use, like a van for you, or which can like accelerate your business in terms of time to value, time to market from your side. So it's a full-fledged product offering that comes from Confluent. Underlying technology remains the Kafka. Now, said that, we have got recognitions. It was created, uh, the original creators of Kafka belong to Confluent, and we have 80% of the Kafka software committers from Confluent itself. And we have like both Confluent Platform or Confluent Cloud, which caters to various regulations in terms of whether you are in, uh, financial industry where you need things on the on-premise kind of thing on your data center, as well as we are available on all the major cloud providers, whether it be AWS, Azure, or cloud, and you have got the recognitions on the side. So there are few use cases like our comments that we have received from the leaders in the market. For example, this beautiful comment comes from the Walmart, where they have defined Confluent as the backbone of their digital omnichannel transformation. And these are like well-known leaders in the organizations. Uh, so Capital One is another such organizations. And what they comment now with Confluent in their place, they look at events as running their business now. So from like a monolith environment to a microservices world where things are moving in real time, so that's where people see the advantage or edge over other businesses. And this is something which might be very popular among Indians. We love cricket, and Disney Hotstar is one of the biggest customers to Confluent. So crucial part that we need to understand is Confluent has been very instrumental in achieving this 25 million concurrent users doing a live match watching. So this is like the gold standards in terms of usage of the Kafka piece. And that's how. And it's not just limited to any specific industry. It can be applied across industries, whether it be retail, healthcare, finance, or transformations. Anywhere you see there's a movement of data, that's where a Confluent can come in and help solve those use cases.
Okay, that was quite a detailed chart. I think people will be able to get this slide deck afterwards, I would assume.
Sure.
Mm. So it all looks quite advanced, right? From depending on where one looks at it, from a business perspective or technical. So question is, yeah. So overview of how Kafka works, what's unique, and a common question is what kind of architecture or technical challenges in adopting event-driven approach. How do you get started? And I see there's a link in the chat. That's one place. What's been your experience, Sunil?
Yeah, so let me briefly talk about Kafka and why is it so unique and why are there is so much adoption to it. And probably this will give us like more of visualizations in terms of what it could achieve. So Kafka is not just a queuing system. You can think of it as a trinity of event streaming. So the first, or there are three major functionalities that we can look from a higher level. So first is the publish and subscribe model. So which means like multiple applications, the producers or consumers as we call it, can connect simultaneously to these queuing events. And they can read the data simultaneously from the same queue without affecting each other. So the producers don't affect the performance of the consumers. What that means for you is you can scale on both the sides, whether it's the production side of the data or the consumption side of the data independently. Second, the storage part of it. So though Kafka is a messaging queue, you can also store the data like probably infinitely also. That's possible using Confluent. Third, any data that's moving on the Kafka system can also be processed or analyzed on the fly. So these are very unique features which Kafka offers out of the box for you. And that's how it makes it more example. So let me give you some examples. So let's say I talked about the PubSub model of connectivity. So there's a module called Kafka Connect. So Kafka Connect is very interesting. So we know like databases like Postgre or MySQL, MongoDB, Oracle, Elastic. So there's lot many databases that exist today. So what a Kafka Connect could do is connect these legacy data systems to move to Kafka, move the data from the legacy data systems to Kafka, and from Kafka to other systems as well. So that's called the source and the sink part of it. Then if you look from a storage point of view, then there's a great article that's there. The New York Times like stores the entirety of the articles that they have released from it, and since 1851 is stored on Kafka. So there's a good blog out there. You can just have a quick look on that. So with Confluent Cloud, which is the cloud offering, you can get it on any of the cloud provider. You have infinite storage there. And Confluent Platform is the on-premise version. You get tied storage to enable these kind of functionality. And which what it basically does, it changes the way you think about the data. Then we have the ksqldb, which is kind of the event streaming database for you. What it can do for you is like capturing events, stream processing, and you can run push or a pull query like a normal database, but it's not really a replacement of the database, but it's more of thinking how you can operate on the data which is moving in real time. So can I join two streams of data? Let's say one is a click stream of data, the other is a user's information. So this way I could form a combined stream of data which could be fed into a machine learning system to take an action or provide a recommendation in real time. So, and what that means for your business is, let's say if I'm taking an example of a financial service, and you want to check for a credit record for each of the individual to where you are providing the finance, you can quickly check that. You don't need to wait for an hour or a day's time to verify if the customer can be given certain credit services or credit scores, the way I'll put it. So with Kafka, what Kafka makes for your business is it makes your entire business real time. And the specific question that you had, which library or which function that you want to start with. So Java, I think, is thought of the first language when you start with Kafka. But what Confluent has gone ahead and done is we have provided support for all the languages that you can think of, like it's a Python, it could be a Scala or Go or Node.js. And even if you don't have that, we do have REST APIs through which you can also interact with the Kafka setup. And also the advantage that Kafka brings in is the elasticity of this whole system, the scalability, the fault tolerance, and lot many things which can come in for you. So as your business grows, which will eventually grow for you, the Kafka scales with it. And as we go forward, the future of data, that's where we look at it's the cloud is moving to infrastructure as a code, and event streaming is the data as a continuous stream of events. It's not something which is residing on your database, which is siloed from different lines of business. So that's how I'll put it, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. Um, Gosh, so we're already at 25 minutes. I told you it goes very quickly.
Yeah,
A question comes in, I think, on many people's minds. There may be experts here. More often
yep,
than not, there's people who are in an organization with a legacy environment.
yep,
One question: as a beginner, my focus is to learn as much as possible. Where do I get started? I mean, what I learned from this is it coexists with what's already there, and it uses a publish and subscribe model. All right. So one doesn't have to be fully microservice enabled, right? One could
yep,
get started with this if one has a service and one wants to wrap that service up within this model.
yep. Yes, sure. Thank you. Let me answer this in a very different way. So when to adapt the data in motion. So as we see it, like every organization is at different stages of their journey. So if you're like very small, you're the first time Kafka user, we think of like you have an early interest. You can start to with a simple use case on your site. You don't need to go like all in into Kafka, but identify a specific minimum viable product where you think having the data source or as a real time information will be more beneficial to your business. And when you start working on this experimental thing, then you can think of identifying a project where you can think of this entire Kafka to set in, and this changes the way you're operating. As you go in uh, to a like more maturity level, you think of how it becomes a more critical or a mission critical system. But you might have different line of business which would not collaborating with each other. When you go to a stage 4 of maturity, we think this entire Kafka deployment can interact, like different line of business can interact with the real-time data with each other, and that's where it becomes mission critical. And if you go to a stage 5 maturity level, it is like a central nervous system. Now, overall, this entire journey, you need a product to stabilize things on your side, which you can rely on, a support team which can take care of things. And yes, training is very much required if you're very much new to Kafka. It's a new technology and you need to invest a certain learning time. And we do have a developer.confluent.io, which I think we created like free of stuff, and you can just explore all of the things where you can find small, like bite-sized tutorials and even the full-fledged demos which you can experiment on your side. Other than that, we do have cloud partners with which you can collaborate and start your journey. With that, I'll just like to like conclude from my side in the interest of time. Is it's the real time and scale that we look for in the future, and the time is now to start getting on this journey.
Yes, no time like the present. Thanks very
Yeah.
much, Sunil. And speaking of time, we've come to the end of the session, so appreciate you've done a lot of work preparing this. Um, how can people contact you? I see there's a partner village people can go to. They can also go to an event this afternoon and
Yeah.
to the developer.confluent.io. Any other thoughts on how people might reach out to you or your organization in India?
Yeah, so I think if you want to reach me personally, you can just go onto my LinkedIn profile, which is Sunil Kumar Behera, and at Confluent. I'm just the only one there. And the other channels, as we mentioned, we do have booths as part of this event that's going on, where we have the dedicated people who would like to address your questions. And we have one more session coming back today, where we'll be talking about data mesh kind of stuff. And I'll be happy to connect over there as well.
Yeah. So if you've got any questions, the chat will still be open for a few minutes after this, just in case something comes to mind. So with that, I'll conclude the session. Thank you so much to all the attendees for your time, and especially to Sunil for the effort you put in and explaining the topic. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to sign out now, but
Okay.
the chat will be open. Okay.
Okay. So
Thanks.
shall I stay here? I can try answering some
Let
of
me
them.
let me see. Is there any question? Yeah, when you say so, I think there's going to be a question here. So I think we can just communicate through the chat. So
Yeah.
you you can leave the session, and then the chat window will be open.
Okay. I can just leave then in that case.
Okay.
Do we have, did we have attendees?
Yeah. Yes.